Sometimes, the tea your mother-in-law makes you every night for 6 weeks isn't love. It's arsenic, measured to the milligram, designed to shut down your brain so she can sell your organs for $500,000. Sometimes, you have to be paralyzed, conscious, and declared brain dead to discover that the woman who gave you a jade bracelet at your wedding has already scheduled the surgery to harvest your heart. Let me tell you about Nyla Carter, a woman who spent 47 days trapped inside her own body, listening to her family plan which parts of her would be sold first. A woman who had to die without dying to finally see that the people who smiled at her wedding were the same ones measuring her worth in kidneys, corneas, and compatible tissue types. Besties, before we continue, let me ask you a question. Have you subscribed to our channel? If not, please do so to help this channel build a strong community and tell us where you are watching from in the comments section. Stay with me, because by the end of this story, you'll understand why the cruelest murders happen slowly, one cup of tea at a time. You'll understand why sometimes the people praying at your bedside are the same ones who put you there. And you might just realize that salvation can come from the darkest corners, from people society taught you to fear, while destruction wears the mask of family and tradition. This is a story about poison disguised as care, about a mafia boss who chose humanity over profit, and about a woman who heard every word of her own murder being planned. Nyla Carter was 29 years old when she fell in love with Jihoon Park. She was a registered nurse at Mercy General Hospital in Los Angeles, working night shifts in the ICU, saving lives with steady hands and a heart that believed in the goodness of people. Jihoon was different, quiet, thoughtful, gentle. He pursued her for months, showing up with coffee, leaving encouraging notes, treating her like she was precious. When he proposed, she said yes without hesitation. What Nyla didn't know was that she wasn't just marrying a man, she was marrying into a family that would see her as a stain on their bloodline. The wedding in spring 2023 was beautiful. Jihoon's mother, Mrs. Park, smiled through the entire ceremony. She welcomed Nyla, even gave her a jade bracelet that had been in the family for generations. "You are family now," Mrs. Park said, clasping the bracelet around Nyla's wrist. Nyla cried with gratitude. She'd lost her own mother to cancer 2 years before. The idea of having a mother figure again felt like a gift she didn't deserve. She had no idea she was wearing a bracelet that would eventually be promised to her replacement. But first, there were moments that made the betrayal so much worse. Nyla tried desperately to belong. She bought Korean language apps, practiced phrases for hours, stumbling over pronunciation just to surprise Mrs. Park with a proper greeting. She researched traditional recipes, spent her rare days off making kimchi from scratch, hopping to earn approval. Her best friend Shanice had warned her, "Girl, I'm not trying to be negative, but his mom looks at you like you're a problem she's waiting to solve. Are you sure about this?" Nyla defended Mrs. Park fiercely. "She's just traditional. She needs time to adjust. Once she sees how much I love Jihoon, how hard I'm trying, she'll accept me. Family takes work." Shanice had hugged her tight. "Just promise me you won't lose yourself trying to become what they want." Nyla had promised, but promises are easy to make when you don't know you're already being erased. The first year of marriage was an education in invisible cruelty. Mrs. Park never raised her voice. She never said anything directly racist, but she had a way of making Nyla feel like a ghost in her own marriage. At family dinners, she would speak only Korean, even though she spoke perfect English, forcing Nyla to sit in silence while conversations flowed around her. When Nyla tried to help in the kitchen, Mrs. Park would watch with tight lips, then redo everything after Nyla left, sighing loudly enough to be heard through the walls. When relatives visited, she would introduce my son Jihoon, but somehow forget to mention the daughter-in-law sitting right there. And always, the quiet comments to Jihoon when she thought Nyla couldn't hear. "You embarrassed our family. You married a foreigner, an outsider. She will never understand our ways. She will never belong. You deserve better." That better had a name, Soo-yeon, a wealthy woman from Seoul's most prestigious families. She appeared at family gatherings as a family friend, then as a business associate, then as someone who just happened to stop by whenever Nyla was working night shifts. Jihoon, weak-willed and conditioned by 31 years of maternal control, didn't pursue Soo-yeon. But he didn't reject her either. He simply allowed his mother to orchestrate a slow replacement, too guilty to confront it, too cowardly to stop it. But the real nightmare began with something Nyla knew nothing about, Mrs. Park's secret that was about to destroy everything. She had a gambling addiction that had spiraled completely out of control, playing high-stakes games in underground rooms throughout Koreatown. She owed $300,000 to people who didn't send collection notices. They sent photographs of Jihoon leaving work. They sent addresses of places he frequented. They sent deadlines measured in weeks, not months. Mrs. Park was desperate, frantic, searching for any solution. And then, through one of her gambling connections, she learned something that changed everything. She learned about the black market for human organs. And she learned that certain rare blood types could fetch extraordinary prices from wealthy patients who didn't ask questions. So she did what any desperate person with the soul of a monster would do. She suggested Nyla get a complete physical. "You work such hard hours," Mrs. Park said with apparent concern. "You should make sure you're healthy. I'll pay for the premium testing." Nyla, desperately grateful for what seemed like genuine care, agreed immediately. The results came back like a lottery ticket. Nyla Carter had an extraordinarily rare blood type and a full-spectrum organ compatibility profile that occurred in less than 0.2% of the population. On the black market, her organs, heart, liver, kidneys, corneas, could be worth over $500,000. Mrs. Park stared at those results for 3 full minutes, her mind calculating. Then she made a phone call to someone who dealt in things that happened in surgical rooms that kept no records. The plan formed with terrifying clarity. Phase 1, remove Nyla quietly without suspicion. Phase 2, harvest her organs through black market surgical teams. Phase 3, marry Jihoon to Soo-yeon and access her family's wealth. Phase 4, clear all debts and secure the family's financial future forever. The poison was elegant in its cruelty. A slow-acting neurotoxin, virtually undetectable in standard medical screenings, that caused progressive neurological failure over several weeks. It would mimic a tragic illness, brain inflammation, maybe a rare autoimmune condition. Nothing that would raise suspicion of foul play. Mrs. Park and Soo-yeon worked together with the efficiency of people who'd convinced themselves they were doing something necessary rather than monstrous. Every evening when Nyla came home from her hospital shifts, exhausted and trusting, they gave her tea. "Special tea," they said, "imported from Korea, good for stress and immune support." Nyla drank it gratefully, thanking them for their thoughtfulness, touched that they were finally treating her like family. Sometimes they added it to her soup, sometimes to her morning coffee. Drop by drop, day by day, for 6 weeks straight, they poisoned her with smiles on their faces and murder in their hearts. The symptoms started gradually in late September 2024. Headaches that wouldn't respond to medication. Then dizziness that made her stumble during shifts. Then fatigue so profound she could barely stay awake during the drive home. Her hands started trembling when she tried to start IVs. Her memory became foggy, losing track of patient charts she'd reviewed minutes before. Her coworkers noticed. "Nyla, you need to see a doctor," her supervisor said. "You're scaring me. This isn't just burnout." Nyla scheduled appointments, ran tests. Everything came back inconclusive. Stress, the doctors said. Perhaps early onset migraines. Maybe she needed to reduce her hours, take better care of herself. She kept working, kept pushing through, kept drinking the tea her mother-in-law prepared with such apparent care. Because that's what good daughters-in-law do. They trust. They accept care. They don't suspect that the hands offering comfort are administering death. On October 15th, 2024, during a routine night shift in the ICU, Nyla Carter collapsed. One moment she was checking a patient's vitals, the next the floor was rushing toward her face and everything went dark. The emergency was catastrophic. Massive brain swelling, respiratory failure, seizures that wouldn't stop even with maximum medication. They intubated her immediately, rushed her to CT scans that showed severe inflammation throughout her brain tissue. The neurology team gave Jihoon the statistics he didn't want to hear. Less than 5% chance of meaningful recovery. High probability of progression to brain death within days. Even if she survived, severe cognitive impairment was almost certain. Mrs. Park arrived at the hospital within the hour, her face arranged in perfect grief, her designer handbag containing documents she'd had prepared weeks ago. She found Jihoon in the ICU waiting room, staring at nothing, his world collapsing. She sat beside him, took his hands, let tears stream down her face. "She will never wake up," Mrs. Park whispered. "The doctors already said it. We cannot keep her suffering. We cannot waste resources on false hope." She pulled out papers, unfolding them on the small table between them. "She was a nurse," Mrs. Park said softly. "She believed in helping others, in organ donation. This is what she would want, to save lives even in death. It's the merciful thing." Organ donation authorization forms, life support withdrawal consent documents, everything perfectly legal, perfectly prepared. Jihoon stared at the papers, his hands shaking. Everything in him screamed that this was wrong, too fast, too convenient. But he'd spent 31 years learning to obey his mother, learning that her judgment was superior to his own, learning that resistance brought only guilt and punishment. His hand moved almost without conscious control, muscle memory of obedience. He signed. He signed the forms that would allow them to harvest Nyla's organs. He signed the consent that would withdraw life support after the required waiting period. He signed his wife's death warrant. But here's what none of them knew. Here's what the medical textbooks rarely mention about the space between life and death. Nyla Carter wasn't dying. She was trapped. The neurotoxin had caused an extremely rare condition called locked-in syndrome, a state where the patient is completely conscious, completely aware, but unable to move or communicate in any way. Her brain was functioning. Her consciousness was intact and screaming, but the pathways between her mind and her muscles had been severed. To every doctor, every nurse, every monitor in that ICU, Nyla looked brain-dead. Her eyes remained closed. Her body was completely still. She required machines to breathe, to maintain blood pressure, to keep her organs functioning. But inside, she was awake. She was aware, and she could hear absolutely everything. The first voice she heard clearly was Soo-yeon's, sitting close to Jihoon somewhere near her bed. "The wedding can be in spring," Soo-yeon said softly. "Cherry blossoms at the botanical garden. Your mother has already contacted the event planner. It will be beautiful." Wedding? They were planning a wedding, while Nyla lay 3 feet away, supposedly dying. "It feels wrong," Jihoon said, his voice thick with guilt. "So soon, she's right here." "She's already gone," Soo-yeon replied, and Nyla could hear the satisfaction barely hidden beneath false sympathy. "Her body just hasn't accepted it yet. You're not betraying her. You're moving forward. That's what she would want. That's what everyone wants for you." Nyla tried to scream. She tried to move, to open her eyes, to do anything that would prove she was still here, still fighting, still alive. Nothing. Her body was a prison, and she was locked inside with the horror of understanding. She had no idea this was just the beginning. Over the next days, the picture became devastatingly clear as conversations happened around her bed like she was already a corpse. She heard Mrs. Park on the phone, speaking rapid Korean to someone about harvest scheduling and optimal timing, and payment transfers to offshore accounts. She heard Soo-yeon discussing which of Nyla's belongings she wanted to keep. "The jewelry is worthless, but the winter coat is nice. Designer. I'll have it altered to fit me." She heard nurses, good nurses she'd worked with, respected colleagues, discussing her case with tragic sympathy, completely unaware the patient they were mourning could hear every word. "She was so young," one nurse said. "Only 29, and her husband is devastated. You can tell he really loved her." If Nyla could have laughed bitterly, she would have. But the worst came on day 8. Mrs. Park entered late at night, accompanied by someone whose footsteps were different, careful, professional, expensive shoes on linoleum. They spoke in hushed Korean near her bedside. "The poison worked perfectly," Mrs. Park said. "No detection. The doctors think it's natural inflammation. The organ broker confirmed everything. We can do full harvest in 6 days. Heart, liver, both kidneys, corneas. $580,000 transferred immediately after extraction." Poison? The word detonated in Nyla's consciousness like a bomb. This wasn't illness. This wasn't bad luck or tragic disease. This was murder. Premeditated, calculated, profitable murder. And the absolute soul-destroying part was that Nyla couldn't do anything about it. She couldn't warn anyone. She couldn't expose them. She couldn't even cry, though her consciousness was drowning in tears her body refused to produce. The days blurred together in horror. The itch on her nose that she couldn't scratch became torture. The hospital gown that twisted beneath her created pressure sores she could feel developing, but couldn't shift away from. The desperate need to blink away the dried tears crusting her eyelashes made her want to scream. The scream built in her throat every day, a massive thing with nowhere to go, trapped like everything else. On day 14, Nyla began to practice. If she was going to die, she would die fighting. Every day she focused on one finger. Move, just move. She visualized the neural pathway, imagined the signal traveling from brain to muscle. Move. Please God, move. Nothing happened, but she kept trying. On day 18, something worse than death occurred. Soo-yeon came alone during afternoon visiting hours. She pulled a chair close to Nyla's bed, settled in comfortably, and pulled out her phone. "I thought you might want to see something," Soo-yeon said conversationally, holding her phone toward Nyla's closed eyes like she was showing a friend pictures. "This is the wedding dress I chose. Vera Wang from the new collection. Jihoon's mother is paying for everything. She's so generous." She swiped to the next image, and Nyla could smell her perfume. The expensive French one Nyla had always wanted but could never afford on a nurse's salary. The scent was suffocating. "And this is the bedroom set we picked out together," Soo-yeon continued. "I told Jihoon we should redecorate the whole house. Too many memories of you, you know, fresh start and all." Soo-yeon paused, then leaned very close to Nyla's ear, her voice dropping to an intimate whisper. "I used to be jealous of you," she said. "You had everything I wanted, the family name, the marriage, Jihoon's complete attention. But then his mother explained something to me. She said you were always temporary, a mistake he made that would be corrected, and now look at you." She laughed softly. "You're not even really here anymore, are you? Just a body waiting to be useful one last time. I should thank you, actually. Your organs are going to solve a lot of problems." Soo-yeon patted Nyla's unresponsive hand with false tenderness. "Don't worry. I'll take good care of Jihoon, better than you ever could. I understand our culture. I know how to be a proper wife. Everything you failed at, I'll succeed." She stood, smoothed her designer dress, and left humming something cheerful. If Nyla could have shattered from pure rage, she would have. Instead, she focused that rage into determination. Move, fight, survive. On day 23, something happened that broke Nyla's heart in a different way. Jihoon entered her room alone, late at night when Mrs. Park had finally gone home. He sat in the chair beside her bed and took her hand. For 2 hours, he just sat there in silence. Then, finally, he spoke. "I know you can't hear me," Jihoon whispered, his voice cracking. "But I need to say this. I'm so sorry, Nyla. My mother says this is mercy, that you're already gone, that keeping you on machines is just prolonging suffering. She says we're doing the right thing." He paused. Nyla felt his thumb stroke across her knuckles. "But it feels like murder," he continued. "It feels like I'm giving up on you. And I don't know what to do. I've never known how to stand up to her. My whole life, I've done what she wanted, and now she wants me to let you go." Nyla screamed inside her paralyzed body. "I can hear you. I'm right here. Stop them. Please, Jihoon, please." Jihoon sat in silence for another 10 minutes, the only sound his quiet crying. Then he stood up slowly. "I'm sorry," he said again. "I'm so sorry." And he left. That was the moment Nyla's heart broke completely. Not when they planned her murder, not when they discussed her organs like merchandise, but when the man she loved admitted he knew it was wrong and walked away anyway. That's when she understood she was truly alone. But on day 26, everything changed. Someone new entered her room late at night, someone who wasn't medical staff or family. She heard expensive shoes on linoleum, the faint smell of cigarette smoke and cologne, a presence that felt different, dangerous in a way that had nothing to do with her mother-in-law's calculated cruelty. "This is the donor," a man's voice said, speaking Korean with an authoritative edge that suggested violence was always an option. "Yes, Mr. Kang," another voice replied, the organ broker. "Perfect compatibility. The family has signed all consents. Surgery is scheduled in 4 days." Kang Di-sung, the man who controlled half of Lowe's Angel's black market medical supply routes, had come personally to inspect his investment. "How did she die?" Kang asked. "Brain inflammation. Natural causes." "Natural causes?" Kang's voice was deeply skeptical. "She's young, healthy-looking, no visible trauma. Brain inflammation doesn't usually present like this." "The medical reports." "I'll see those myself," Kang interrupted. "Leave us." Footsteps retreated. A door closed. Nyla was alone with this stranger. Then Kang did something unexpected. He took her hand, his touch clinical and brief, checking her pulse manually instead of trusting the monitors. In that moment of contact, something happened. Nyla's finger twitched. It was involuntary, reflexive, the smallest movement her damaged nervous system managed to produce. But it was movement. Kang went completely still. "Jesus Christ," he whispered in English. Then louder in Korean. "If you can hear me, if you're conscious, try to move your finger again." Nyla focused every atom of her being on that finger. "Move, move, please, God, please." Her finger twitched again. She heard Kang's sharp intake of breath, then rapid movement as he pulled out his phone, making calls in urgent Korean too fast for her to follow. But she caught words. "Alive, aware, investigation, evidence." Who was this man? Why was he helping her? Over the next hours, Nyla learned the answer through overheard phone conversations. Kang Di-sung was exactly what her family would have warned her about, a mafia boss, ruthless and dangerous. But he had a code, a line drawn in his own blood that he refused to cross. Years ago, when Kang was 25, his younger sister Minjae had been 17, bright, funny, planning to study medicine. One day she didn't come home from school. He'd spent 6 months tracking her through underground networks, calling in every favor, following every lead, becoming the monster he needed to be to find her. He found her finally in a shipping container brothel in Long Beach. She was alive, physically intact, but when she looked at him, there was nothing behind her eyes, just emptiness and terror where his little sister used to be. Kang had killed the traffickers, all of them, slowly, methodically, with a creativity born of rage and grief, but it didn't bring Minjae back. She lived in a care facility now, 28 years old with the awareness of a frightened child. Every month, Kang visited. Every month, she didn't recognize him. Every month, he sat with her anyway, holding the hand of the sister he'd failed to save in time. So when he saw Nyla's finger twitch, when he realized she was conscious and trapped and being harvested like livestock, he didn't see a stranger. He saw Minjae before it was too late to save her. "I'm going to get you out of this," Kang told Nyla quietly. "But I need time, I need evidence, and I need you to stay exactly as you are. Don't let them know you're aware. Not yet. Can you do that?" Nyla's finger twitched once. Yes. What followed over the next 3 days was a masterclass in criminal investigation. Kang had resources the police couldn't dream of, people inside hospitals, inside criminal networks, inside financial systems. He worked with ruthless efficiency. Within 48 hours, he had everything. Poison purchase records tracked to Mrs. Park through 3 intermediaries. Recorded conversations from surveillance he'd installed in Ji-hoon's house, capturing Soo-yeon and Mrs. Park discussing timing, logistics, and how to spend the money. Financial records showing Mrs. Park's gambling debts and the organ broker's payment schedule. medical records proving the consent was obtained through fraud. He also brought in a neurologist from his private network, Dr. Sarah Chen, someone who owed him favors and didn't ask questions about how she was summoned at 3 a.m. She examined Nyla thoroughly with specialized tests the hospital hadn't bothered with. "She's locked in," Dr. Chen confirmed, "fully conscious and showing signs of potential recovery if given proper treatment instead of." She looked at the surgery schedule on Nyla's chart. "Instead of this." "How long until she can demonstrate it herself?" Kang asked. Dr. Chen examined the neurological progression notes. "Days, maybe a week. Her neural pathways are reconnecting, but slowly." "She has 3 days before they harvest her organs," Kang said flatly. Dr. Chen's face went pale. "Then we need to move faster." Meanwhile, Mrs. Park was accelerating her own timeline. The gambling enforcers were losing patience. The organ buyer was confirmed and waiting. Everything was arranged. And Nyla, trapped in her paralyzed body, kept practicing. On day 28, she felt something different, a stronger tingle in her right hand. Not just sensation, connection. The neural pathway was reforming, message by message, synapse by synapse. She focused everything on that hand. Move, move, move. Her finger twitched, stronger this time, more controlled. On day 29, she managed to move 2 fingers. She had 1 day left before surgery, 1 day to prove she was alive. On the morning of October 30th, Operating Room 3 was prepared for what the surgical schedule listed as a routine organ donation harvest. Mrs. Park arrived early, dressed in expensive black, her face arranged in appropriate grief. Soo-yeon sat with Ji-hoon in the waiting area, already wearing the jade bracelet Mrs. Park had taken from Nyla's bedside table. The surgical team began prep. Nyla was being wheeled toward the OR, her consciousness screaming, her body fighting with everything it had to move, to show any sign. And then the hospital's main entrance exploded with activity. Police, FBI, dozens of them. The chaos was instantaneous and absolute. Agents swarmed through corridors, radios crackling. They found Mrs. Park near the surgical wing and descended on her with practiced efficiency. Handcuffs appeared. "What is this?" Mrs. Park shrieked. "I've done nothing. My daughter-in-law is donating her organs. This is legal." "Mrs. Park, you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and participating in organ trafficking," the lead FBI agent said, reading from a card. Soo-yeon screamed from the waiting room. Ji-hoon stood frozen, his face draining of all color as agents surrounded him too, not arresting but questioning. At the exact same time, in the pre-op area where Nyla lay waiting, Dr. Chen appeared with Kang beside her. "Stop this procedure immediately," Dr. Chen commanded the surgical team. "This patient is responsive." The surgeon looked skeptical. "The charts clearly indicate." "Watch," Dr. Chen said. She leaned over Nyla's bed. "Nyla, if you can hear me, I need you to do what we practiced. Squeeze my hand." Nyla had been fighting for 29 days. Fighting the poison, fighting the paralysis, fighting for the pathway between her brain and her muscles to reconnect. Everything had been building to this moment. She focused every atom of will, every ounce of determination, every scream that had been trapped inside her for a month. Squeeze. Her fingers contracted around Dr. Chen's hand. Weak, trembling, but absolutely unmistakable. The surgical team gasped. Dr. Chen's eyes filled with tears. "Again, Nyla, squeeze again." She did, stronger this time. "Call neurology," the surgeon said, his voice shaking. "Cancel this surgery immediately. The patient is conscious." Within minutes, Nyla's pre-op room filled with medical staff. Real examinations this time, not harvesting preparations. Commands she'd been desperate to hear for weeks. "Nyla, if you can hear me. Open your eyes." She focused on her eyelids, those muscles that had refused every command for a month. Open, open, open. Light flooded in, blinding and painful and absolutely beautiful. Faces swam into focus. Dr. Chen, nurses, people looking at her with wonder and relief. "Move your toes." She managed the smallest wiggle. "Squeeze my hand again." She did, both hands this time. The medical team erupted in controlled excitement, documenting everything, calling specialists, confirming what seemed impossible. Nyla Carter was awake. She was aware, and she had been the entire time. By evening, she could hold her eyes open for minutes at a time. Her voice was still gone, but her hands could grip and release on command. She was coming back. When Jihoon was finally allowed into her recovery room, escorted by a police officer, he looked like a ghost. His eyes were red from crying, his hands shaking. "Nyla," he whispered, moving toward her bed. "Thank God, we thought you were." Nyla's hand moved, surprisingly strong, gripping the bed rail. Her eyes locked on his, and even without words, the message was clear. "Don't come closer." "I didn't know," Jihoon said desperately. "About the poison, about selling your organs, I swear I didn't know. My mother said." Nyla's voice came out rough as gravel, barely functional after weeks of disuse, but the words were clear enough. "You knew about Suyeon." Jihoon froze. "You knew," Nyla continued, each word an effort but powered by fury. "They were replacing me, planning our divorce. You knew I was being erased while I was dying." "I was weak," Jihoon whispered. "I should have." "You signed the papers," Nyla interrupted. "You gave them permission to harvest my organs, to kill me. The doctors said you'd never wake up." "I heard everything, Jihoon." Her voice was getting stronger now, fueled by rage. "Every conversation, every plan. I heard you tell Suyeon about redecorating our bedroom. I heard you cry about how wrong it felt and then do it anyway." Tears streamed down Jihoon's face. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "Get out," Nyla said. "Please." "Get out." Her voice cracked with the effort, but the command was absolute. The police officer gently guided Jihoon from the room. As he reached the door, Nyla spoke one more time. "I'll never forgive you, not for being weak, for knowing it was wrong and doing it anyway." The door closed. Nyla closed her eyes, exhausted and triumphant and broken and free. The legal destruction that followed was swift and merciless. Mrs. Park was charged with attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and participating in organ trafficking. The evidence Kang had gathered was airtight. Recordings, financial records, the poison purchase trail, everything. She was sentenced to 35 years in federal prison. At her age, it was a life sentence. Suyeon was charged as an accomplice to attempted murder. Her wealthy family disowned her immediately to protect their reputation. She received 15 years. Jihoon wasn't charged criminally. He genuinely hadn't known about the poison or organ trafficking. But he cooperated fully with investigators, providing testimony that corroborated everything. The divorce was finalized while Nyla was still in physical therapy, learning to walk again, to write again, to reclaim her body from the paralysis. She never wanted to see him again. But there was one more conversation Nyla needed to have. 6 months after her awakening, after months of intensive rehabilitation, she met Kang Di-sung at a quiet cafe in a neighborhood where no one would recognize either of them. "Why did you save me?" Nyla asked directly. "You didn't know me. You had nothing to gain. Your business operates in the same black markets that almost killed me." Kang was silent for a long moment, stirring coffee he wouldn't drink. Then he told her about Minjai, about finding her too late, about the promise he'd made that he would never let it happen again if he had the power to stop it. "When I saw your finger move," Kang said quietly, "when I realized you were conscious and trapped and being harvested like livestock, I didn't see a stranger. I saw my sister before I failed her." "You saved me because of her," Nyla said softly. "I saved you because some things are unforgivable," Kang replied. "I'm not a good man, I've done terrible things, but there are lines I won't cross, ever. Human trafficking is one of them." They sat in comfortable silence. No romance developed, their worlds were too different, their moral codes too divergent. But there was respect, recognition of shared humanity in the most unlikely circumstances. "You survived because you refused to disappear," Kang said finally. Nyla smiled slightly, still relearning how to make her face express what her heart felt. You reminded me that monsters don't always wear criminal suits. Sometimes they wear pearls and serve poison tea. And sometimes the people society calls monsters are the only ones willing to see you as human. They parted after that meeting, returning to their separate lives. Kang continued his operations in the shadows. Nyla returned to nursing, but with a new purpose burning in her chest. 8 months after her recovery, Nyla Carter opened the Locked-In Advocacy Center, a nonprofit dedicated to helping victims of domestic poisoning, medical fraud, and families navigating locked-in syndrome diagnosis. She used the settlement money from her lawsuit against Mrs. Park's estate to fund it. The clinic was small, modest, located in a diverse Los Angeles neighborhood where women from all backgrounds felt safe walking through the door. Above the entrance, a bronze plaque read, "For those who were silenced but survived, we hear you." Nyla never remarried. She built a life on her own terms, one where trust was earned through actions, not words. Where family meant people who proved their love when it was difficult, not convenient. Where survival wasn't just about living, but about refusing to let evil people write your final chapter. Later, Nyla would think about timing and how close she'd come to a different ending. What if Kang hadn't been the one to inspect her that night? What if a different buyer had come, one without a dead sister and a conscience? What if her finger hadn't twitched at that exact moment when he was touching her hand? She would have been murdered, legally, with signed consent forms and grieving family members and organ recipient thank you letters. Her organs would have saved lives, and everyone would have called it beautiful. And no one would ever have known she was screaming the entire time. That thought haunted her sometimes, late at night. How many others had there been? How many people declared brain dead were actually trapped and aware, screaming silently while families made decisions about their bodies? It became part of her mission, advocating for better locked-in syndrome screening, for longer waiting periods before organ harvest, for patients' rights even when they couldn't speak for themselves. 3 years after her awakening, Nyla was invited to speak at a medical conference about locked-in syndrome awareness. After her presentation, a young woman approached her, nervous and desperate. "Mrs. Carter, my mother collapsed 3 weeks ago. The doctors say it's brain inflammation, that she'll never wake up. My family wants to withdraw life support and donate her organs." The woman's hands shook. "But after hearing your story, what if she's like you were? What if she can hear us?" Nyla took the woman's hands. "What tests have they run?" "CT scans, MRI, standard neurological assessments." Ask them to do functional MRI studies," Nyla said. "Ask for locked-in syndrome screening protocols. Ask them to try communication boards, eye-tracking technology, anything beyond the standard tests. And tell your family you need more time." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "They'll think I'm in denial." "Maybe you are," Nyla said gently. "But maybe you're the only one who loves her enough to be certain. Fight for her. Fight like she's listening to every word you say, because she might be." The woman hugged her tight. Thank you so much." Nyla watched her leave, knowing she'd just planted a seed of hope that might save a life or might lead to prolonged grief. But she'd learned something profound in those 47 days of conscious paralysis. Hope, even painful hope, was better than convenient surrender. That evening, Nyla returned to her small apartment, exhausted but satisfied. On her desk, she found another unmarked envelope, the kind that had been arriving sporadically for 3 years now, always with the same elegant handwriting. Inside was a newspaper clipping. Mrs. Park had been denied parole. Again. She would die in prison, old and forgotten, having lost everything she'd schemed to protect. Beneath the clipping, a handwritten note. "Some people should never be forgiven. You chose the harder path, helping others instead of destroying her. That makes you stronger than both of us. Stay safe. K." Nyla placed the card in her desk drawer with all the others Kang had sent over the years. A strange friendship built on mutual respect and shared understanding that the world isn't divided neatly into good and evil. Sometimes the monsters wear pearls and family heirlooms. Sometimes the saviors have blood on their hands and criminal empires. And sometimes, the only thing that matters is who sees your humanity when everyone else sees profit. Years passed. The Locked-In Advocacy Center grew, opening satellite offices in 3 more cities. Nyla trained other advocates, published research papers, testified before medical ethics boards about the need for better screening protocols. She never spoke to Jihoon again. She heard through mutual acquaintances that he'd moved to Korea, never remarried, spent his life carrying the guilt of signatures given too easily. She felt nothing about that, not satisfaction, not pity, just distant acknowledgement that some choices create consequences you carry forever. Mrs. Park died in prison when Nyla was 35. She didn't attend any memorial, didn't send flowers or condolences, simply noted the date and continued her work. Soo-yeon was released after serving 12 years. She tried to contact Nyla once, wanting to apologize, to explain, to somehow find redemption. Nyla blocked the number without responding. Some apologies don't deserve acceptance. Some betrayals are too calculated for forgiveness. On the 10th anniversary of her awakening, Nyla received one final envelope from Kang. Inside was a single photograph. His sister Minjae, smiling in a garden at her care facility, holding a flower, looking peaceful if not fully present. The note read, "She smiled today when I visited, first time in 10 years. I told her about you, about the center, about all the people you've saved. I think somewhere she understood. Thank you for giving meaning to what happened to both of you. This is my last letter. Stay safe. K." Nyla framed the photograph and placed it in her office, beside the plaque. A reminder that trauma can be transformed, that survival can become purpose, that the worst things that happen to us don't have to define us, they can refine us into exactly who the world needs. Every patient she helped, every life she saved, every woman who walked out of her center with validation and protection and a plan, each one was proof that they'd tried to erase her and failed. They'd tried to reduce her to body parts and profit margins. She'd become irreplaceable. They'd tried to silence her forever. She'd become a voice for thousands. They'd tried to make her disappear. She'd become impossible to ignore. And that, Nyla thought as she prepared for another day of advocacy and healing and fierce protection of the vulnerable, that was the sweetest revenge imaginable. Not destruction, not equal cruelty, just building a life so meaningful, so impactful, so undeniably present that the people who tried to harvest her for parts had to live with the evidence of their failure every single day. The coldest betrayals happen over cups of poisoned tea, served with smiles. The cruelest murders are planned by people who attend your wedding and give you heirlooms. And sometimes, the only person who sees your humanity when everyone else sees profit margins is someone the world taught you to fear. But here's what Nyla learned in those 47 days of locked in hell. Survival isn't enough. Revenge isn't enough. The real victory is transforming your trauma into someone else's salvation. Taking the worst thing that ever happened to you and making sure it becomes the reason someone else survives. Every morning, Nyla Carter woke up breathing, moving, speaking, fighting, all the things they'd tried to take from her. And every morning, that was victory. Not just for her, but for everyone who'd ever been silenced, poisoned, dismissed, or told their instincts were wrong. She was living proof that sometimes you have to die without dying to finally see the truth. And sometimes, you have to come back from death itself to become exactly who you were always meant to be. If you enjoyed this story, besties, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Drop a comment below and tell us, what would you do if the people who were supposed to protect you were the ones planning your murder? Have you ever experienced betrayal so deep it changed everything you believed about trust? Have you ever had instincts that everyone called paranoia but turned out to be right? We want to hear your stories, your survival, your truth. You are not alone, and we are listening.